you have to know what you want to put out. Ano bang type ng uh, podcast or content ang gusto mong ilabas. And at the same time, you have to know ano ba yung capacity mo or ano ba yung sino ka as a podcaster if ever na, magiging, parang i-visualize mo. Okay, gusto ko ng podcast, for example, the Roma Miclat podcast. Halimbawa ko, gusto ko ng Roma Miclat podcast. Ano ba yung gusto kong mangyari doon? I mean, you can have your pegs, but make sure nalalabas yung totoong ikaw.
Hello, pod friends. Welcome to another episode of Ito ang Podcast. And this is brought to you by Kangaroo Firm Media Lab, the Australia's multicultural podcast management show. For this episode, we're talking to Roma Miclat. So he's a content creator, a podcast producer, a social media manager. All of it ata nasa kanya na lahat eh. So even the public speaking and event host. So if you need some event hosts or something else, just probably have a chat with Roma Miklat, and I think she gonna give us some email or mobile number or phone number to contact her at the end of the show. All right, please welcome to Ito ang Podcast, Roma Miklat. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Rico. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and hi to everyone who's listening sa Ito ang Podcast by Kangaroo Fern. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to, makipagkwentuhan sa'yo today.
All right. Okay, Roma. Can I say Roma, or do you have any preferred nickname?
No, Roma is fine.
All right. Okay. First question I have is, who is Roma?
Ang hirap naman the first question. Well, Roma is a very extrovert person, but then after going overseas, medyo nag-turn ako into introvert. But I love talking to people. I love having meaningful conversations, and that is why I am a podcast host. I want to talk to people. It's just that if you are overseas, you know this, Nico, if you are overseas, having the particular energy that you're looking for to from people na nakakausap mo, sometimes it's hard. And so our true friends are in the Philippines, but here you need social interaction, you need a community. And the thing with podcasts, yun yung nahanap ko. So even if I am in Singapore, I can speak to people all over the world, and we can interact with each other. So basically, I'm a very extrovert person. Yon.
All right, thank you for that. So you're saying the podcast give you creativity and to explore other things. So you got 3 podcasts, okay? So you got Empowered Talk with Roma Miklat, you got That Broke Pinay podcast, and Usapang podcast. That's a lot of things. So what is the goal of each podcast that you're doing?
All right. Yes, you're right. I have 3 shows at the moment. Empowered Talks is the mother of all the podcasts show that I have or produce. Siya yung original. Siya yung origin. So before, I used to talk about a lot of things. It's like a lifestyle podcast where, the typical, you will find everything under the sun. But then I was like, why am I parang may isang araw na I'm talking about finance. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking about my emotions. And I was like, ang gulo. And now one of my clients was actually on the finance industry. And then I learned so much from that client that I decided that maybe I need a separate finance podcast with the goal of, I also want to educate myself. Well, I am learning while sharing it to my listeners. And so nag-split siya into 2. So now the Empowered Talks podcast is more of self-development and getting to know yourself well. because I believe that it's very important that you get to know yourself so that you can express yourself well, and basically self care. So I in Empowered Talks, I talk with people who have different experiences, and they can share it to my listeners. And then I also love asking questions, so mga tanong na pwede mong itanong sa sarili mo that will help you realize who you are as a person. And so doon nag-stick na yung topic ko for Empowered Talks podcast. And then for that Broke Pinay podcast, I had a different take. So it is a financial podcast, but I was more vulnerable because inamin ko doon that I am gastadora. Which is, you don't usually hear from a typical financial podcast. Di ba? Kasi magagaling sila sa pera eh. And I'm like, no guys, I am not great when it comes to handling my finances. But I am willing and open to learn gaya nyo. So it's like saying to them na hindi pa ahuli ang lahat kung ikaw ay gastador, kung ikaw ay may utang. I will help you go through your problem, and we will figure it out. So that's one. And then come the Usapang podcast. That is the first, I call it the first Filipino podcast show for podcasters, because uh, before we were talking about how, the podcast scene in the Philippines, right? It's very, parang baby stage pa siya. And then I realized that in our community for the podcasters in the Philippines, ang daming podcast, pero walang nag-guide. Walang nagsasabi na ganito dapat, here are the tips. And you can see that from the questions that the members are throwing in the community. And they're asking which mic to use, paano kapag nababurnout ka na, creativity burnout. And I was like, you know what? I was talking to Jerry kasi siya yung madalas kong kakwentuhan, because he has been one of my guests also for both shows. And I said to him, you know what? I have this idea. I don't know, guys, if you are familiar with GCN, Global Cycling Network, because we do biking. And then the Global Cycling Network, they have this show na meron silang dalawang hosts, and nag-usap sila about the updates, the controversial topics, problems, whatever, everything about cycling. And I was watching them for a couple of months, and I told myself, parang gusto ko ng ganito, but for podcasting. But this is not to benefit me. This is to benefit the people who are very new to, podcasting, but they want to learn more. And so the birth of Usapang Podcast happened, which was October. So we released our first episode. So out of the three shows, siya yung pinakabago. But so far, the new podcast, especially the new podcasters, they love it. Kasi natutulungan daw sila. And we're happy to know that.
So, what if you were starting off early stage podcaster like sa Pilipinas, for example? What are the tools that you use when you producing your own podcast?
When I was starting, to be honest, hindi ko alam ang Audacity. I was using the GarageBand because my setup is Apple. So for me, dun lang talaga ako. I had my mic that I bought 3 years ago because, I was planning to do vlogging before. And I was like, you know what? I need a good mic. Tapos hindi natuloy kasi hindi ko talaga feel yung sarili ko sa camera. And then so it was stored in a storage somewhere. Come 2019, doon na. Sabi ko, podcasting, naririnig-rinig ko na siya. I have a mic. Maybe I can figure something out. And that was it. I had a mic, and then I tried to edit in using the GarageBand, which is the software that comes with your, kung ano man ang device mo na Apple. And then if you don't have Apple products, then you can use the Audacity. That is a very famous free tool that a lot of podcasters are using, especially at the beginning of their journey as podcasters.
So you think that to start a podcast, you don't need expensive equipment to do that?
I honestly don't. Yeah, I agree. Hindi mo kailangan ng expensive equipment. the first thing that you have to have is the reason why you are doing it. Because even if you have the expensive equipment, if you don't have the inspiration and you don't have the will, gagastos ka lang. I mean, you'll just burn money. And then you're not using your equipment. And then what? And you know what, Miko? I've known or I've met a lot of people who doesn't have any fancy equipment, but they have a very good voice modulation, the way they speak. They can really gamit lang nila the ear, the headset, and they can work it out. And then later on, they figured out na maybe I wanna upgrade. Yeah. So kumbaga it's not in the hardware. It's the creator first. Yon.
So I know may tatlo yung podcast mo. So how did you schedule yourself to do this? Because on planning a podcast, planning an episode, especially if that's every season, you have to plan it ahead. So you get 3 podcasts. So sa ating mga listener o na trying to get into podcasting space, ano yung how's your workflow? How do you do it? You're like a superwoman.
I like that. Thank you very much, Miko. Pero wag niyo akong tularan kasi mahirap siya, guys. Char. Hindi. Okay, I will share my workflow. Yeah, you're right. Hindi ko rin at first when I was doing just one podcast, okay ako like every week ang sipag ko. Tapos walang break yan. As in every week may new episode, dala-dalawa pa sa isang linggo because before I had Empowered Talk separately which is every Sunday because I have co-hosts who are international co-speakers, and then I have my solo which is Tagalog to cater my Filipino audience. And then I was like, may video pa pala yun. So nag-edit din ako ng video. And I was like, okay, this cannot happen if I have more than one podcast. So what I did is I figured out what do I want? What do I really want? Is it a video podcast or just a podcast? Because if I'm gonna do just podcast, which means it's just audio, okay lang, mas madali yung process. Mas madali siyang i-edit versus a video podcast na, oh my God, talaga dudugo ka. I mean, like, if you're gonna do it for the 3 shows, I need a team. I honestly cannot handle it. Plus on the side job. So I had to accept that I have limitations as a creator. And so I decided, okay, I'm just gonna do a podcast. And then I also checked my stats. Because even if you are for my, I mean, just for my case, even if I am doing weekly episodes, the engagement is not that high. Because every week, labas ka ng episode eh. So minsan, hindi nabibigyan ng pansin ng audience mo yung new episode mo. May bago ka na naman. So for me, ang mabagal kasi yung pag-increase ko ng listeners. So what I did is, I decided na maybe I will do alternate week. So I'll just gonna produce 2 episodes per show on an alternate week. For example, Empowered Talks, I release new episodes every first Thursday and third Thursday of the month. And then for that Broke Pinay podcast, I am releasing new episodes every second Wednesday of the month and the fourth Wednesday of the month. That in that case, I can give my listeners enough time to listen and enjoy the new episode. Because sometimes some of them they don't listen to new episodes until after the first week na eh. So, 'di ba? And then nakita ko na the engagement nag-improve. So that particular process, it worked for me. I mean, I cannot speak for everyone. Again, that this is just particularly for my shows. And then for the Usapang podcast naman, we are releasing, this one is weekly. New episodes weekly, pero very short episodes. And the good thing about it, because I have a co-host and co-producer, hindi ko sagot lahat. Hati kami sa job. And so, ang ginagawa ko lang usually, I polish the script and then I edit and then that's it. But the rest of it, si Jeric. And I do the socials. But, it's not, hindi mabigat because may kahati ka. So, ayun. And for the planning, I have a lot of topics. I have separate ano ko ok ako eh may sorry. Sorry for the word. I really have I treat my shows as if it's my job. So I have a file folder for everything. I have I list down every idea that I can have. Minsan, 'di ba, you're cooking or you're in the shower or I don't know, nagtitiklop ka ng damit or you're watching a movie, you're reading a book. I make sure that if an idea comes up, I will write it down. I paste it on the folder and then there is a day in a month that before the month starts, another month starts, I have to recheck which ones ang pasok sa calendar na to. So, yon. And then I also have, before I start a season, I also plan my guests. So, nakaano na yan, naplano ko na, kumbaga, na ano ko na sila, na-imagine ko na sila na ito, I'll plot this guest to this episode. So, ayun. And then, after nun, I send out invitations. After nun, recording. And then I polish everything. Now, for publishing, every week I have a day just for my content. Ibig sabihin, I do everything. Lahat ng pinopost ko sa social media, ginagawa ko nung araw na yon. Kasi kung na-record mo naman na before, na-edit mo na, so you have the highlights of your episode. And then you can come up with the yung ipopost mo na sa socials. So that's it. Yun lang. I don't know if I missed anything.
So you're saying it's very important talaga as a podcaster to have like a calendar to so that you know what is the next episode or in future episodes so that you know you have a say time management. So
Yes. Oo, it's very important kasi it will guide you eh. At you know what you will do for the next week, for example. You know what's coming up. You know if you are supposed to be ito na pala yung time of the week that I should, bank my episode so I have to record. For us in Usapang podcast, we bank episodes eh. So we really set schedule to record more than siguro mga 2 to 3 episodes per recording para edit na lang. Kasi you don't have all the time sometimes, especially pag may co-host ka, di ba? O katulad doon, may minsan may events or nag-holiday. Syempre, hindi mo naman kukunin yung time na yon from your family, di ba? And so it gives you time, it gives you leeway then to relax a little kasi you need it also. If not, wala, mapapagod ka.
in connection with that, it's I think it's burn. So how do you overcome this burnout as a content creator and as a podcaster? Tatlo pa yung podcast mo.
Honestly, naramdaman ko yan when before ang tagal nung transition ko when I left for season 6 for Empowered Talks. Alam mo, nagsabay-sabay sila, imposter syndrome, tapos parang biglang, you don't have the will to move, ayaw mong mag-isip. And so, you give yourself time to have a break then talaga. It's really important that you spend time away from your devices. And ako, I try to read books. You expose yourself to unconventional media. Hindi lang YouTube. Yes, YouTube. Ako, I get my ideas from YouTube, Netflix. You watch your drama, K-dramas. I get my topics and ideas from there. But sometimes, you really have to let go of your devices and go back to books, magazines, or just, walk outside, observe people. Di ba, isipan nila, may bigla kang matatanong sa sarili mo na parang, bakit nga ba kailangang, things, parang may matatanong ka eh, about life. Na parang, bakit nga ba kailangan nating ischedule yung sarili natin to rest? Diba? Bakit hindi siya, a lot of things can pop in your mind. Kasi diba, pag idle mind, marami kang naiisip. So give your mind the chance to the chance to think of other things aside from what you see on social media, and it will help you talaga.
So relax. a little bit.
Yeah, oo. O gusto mo 'pag tipong ano about, ano 'yun, life advice, mag-spend ka ng the entire day with your family. Tignan mo parang bakit nga ba kayo ganito as a family? And then maybe you can share that, yung mga gano'n.
So, ano yung, anong maasahan ng mga listener mo, especially who's watching here as well, for this year sa mga podcast mo, Roma? Anong maasahan nila?
Okay, the first one for the Empowered Talks, there will be more solo show because for the past 3 seasons, hindi ako masyadong nag-solo episodes. Ang dami kong kakwentuhan. Nag-invite ako sa show. But then, sabi ko, maybe it's time for me to go back and do solo shows because I have a lot of stories, personal stories that I want to share. And I can invite a couple of guests, but I want to bring it back to its original form. And it's more of like, again, I said, self-discovery. I will ask a lot of questions, and hopefully the audience or the listeners can ask those questions to themselves so that they can, know themselves better. And then for That Broke Pinay podcast, the first season was all about, I keep asking, are you a saver or a spender? So figuring out kung ikaw ba ay gastador o matipid was done on season 1. Now on season 2, That Broke Pinay podcast understands her money. So your journey with me on season 2 is that you will understand yung sweldo mo, yung benefits mo, ano ba ang dapat ginagawa dito. And then moving forward, marami pa akong i-offer sa kanila that hopefully will help them, manage their personal finances better. And for Usapang Podcast naman, we continue to share personal stories and journeys din. And also, kasi there are a couple of questions na binibigay sa amin ng aming, kasi we have a Facebook group for Usapang Podcast, and there are questions talaga that we will try to answer as we move forward with the episodes. And of course, kung ano man yung updates in the international podcast scene, we will also bring that sa Usapang Podcast. And hopefully our fellow Filipino podcasters can apply it to their shows.
Sounds great and interesting for this year for you. What for people who's listening right now and thinking of getting into, say, sa podcasting? What is your advice to them before they step into the mic and start recording?
That's a very good question. Una, you have to know what you want to put out. Ano bang type ng podcast or content ang gusto mong ilabas? And at the same time, you have to know ano ba yung capacity mo or ano ba yung sino ka as a podcaster if ever na, magiging, parang i-visualize mo. Okay, gusto ko ng podcast, for example, the Roma Miclat podcast. Halimbawa ako, gusto ko ng Roma Miclat podcast. Ano ba yung gusto kong mangyari doon? I mean, you can have your pegs, but make sure nalalabas yung totoong ikaw. Kasi for example, ang dami kong gusto ko palang maging katulad ni, sino ba? Sila Pia Wurtzbach, diba? They're doing podcast or tipong parang si Tito Boy Abunda or ganon. Or a lot more sa international scene. Sometimes, ang nangyayari, paglabas ng first couple of episodes mo, hindi ikaw yung lumalabas sa mic. Lumalabas is yung the person that you look up to. So, nagiging impression ka. That's why we explain to people, that wag kayong mahiya or matakot if your first season or your first couple of episodes is totally different sa episode mo ngayon, because it only proves na nag-i-improve yung journey mo. Maganda yun, nag-i-improve ka as a creator, 'di ba? And ibig sabihin, marami kang natututunan and ina-apply mo yun sa sarili mo, and therefore nag-i-improve yung buong show. So, yon, you have to know your why, bakit ka nagpa-podcast. Nahalina ka ba ng kapitbahay mo? Or nakita mo kasi uso yun? Or what, 'di ba? Baka naman nagka-interest ka lang pero curious ka lang pala. Kasi if that's the case, baka mamaya after one season or couple of episodes, hindi mo na masundan. Pod fade ka na. And unfortunately, paulit-ulit nating sinasabi to Miko, podcasting is more than just recording. It's a lot of work. Ikaw lahat. Lalo na kung hindi ka naman nag-hire ng team to do everything for you. So, yeah. Podcasting is a serious business, I would say.
I totally agree for you, especially it's podcasting is it's not a it's not a what's that? It's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. So
Yes,
if
I
you
love that. Yeah, oo.
so if you need to be if your goal is to teach people and grow your podcast, it's a long term. It's not easily. So you have to strategize. Okay, thank you for that. So how can our listener and who's watching right now contact with you to have a chat or something else about podcasting, anything?
All right. So basically, I am everywhere. You can follow my socials. If you want to follow Empowered Talks podcast, just search at Empowered Talks on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then you can also follow kung gusto mo naman ng financial podcast kasi gusto mong matuto about, handling your money, saving, emergency fund, etc. You can follow That Broke Pinay podcast on Facebook and YouTube. Just type at That Broke Pinay podcast. And then the other one, if you are fond of, or maybe you have an interest in creating a podcast, you can follow at Usapang Podcast. We have our socials at Instagram and Facebook. And then we also have an exclusive Facebook group, which is at Usapang Podcast Facebook group. And all my shows can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, at kung saan ka man nakikinig ng iyong podcast. And if you want to send the message, or you want to ask questions, you can send it to hello at romamiclat.com.
All right, thank you so much. So all the link will be in the show notes. Hopefully my show note writer will do that. All right, so thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time.
Miko.
Thank you so much. So Roma Miclat is a content creator, podcast producer, and host of Empowered Talk with Roma Miclat, That Broke Pinay podcast, and Usapang podcast. Ito ang podcast. See you in 2 weeks' time.
Are you ready to finally start your own podcast? Maybe you already have one, but need a podcast manager to help you level up. We're here for either. Book a call at www.kangaroofern.com. www.kangaroofern.com.